Inside the 12-hour interrogation, the one question that broke the alibi. Tap like, lock in, and tell me the exact word when your doubt starts, because one sentence in this room will split a family story in two. It begins on a porch in Colorado, sun high, cameras higher. A husband stands with folded arms and a voice carefully measured, talking about his missing wife and daughters as if he's walking across a creaking floor that might hold. He asks them, if they're watching, to come home. He calls them by name, with the poise of a man who has practiced love out loud. Neighbors peer from windows. Reporters nod. The house behind him looks staged for reassurance. Door clean, blinds in order, garden obedient. On screen, he becomes the public face of worry. Plain shirt, steady gaze, the rhythm of a man trying to keep his breathing quiet enough that the microphone won't catch the tremble. But there is a room waiting that ignores cameras. Fluorescent light, a rectangular table, 2 chairs, a recorder already blinking in its little red heartbeat. The next morning he sits there and smiles the way people do when they want every human edge smoothed. The detectives start with air and water, hometowns, jobs, schedules, because rapport opens more locks than force. He cooperates. He signs. He says he'll do a polygraph. He says he wants to help. The examiner speaks softly, a professional lullaby. Here is how your body talks, she says. Here is how we anchor the truth so it doesn't drift. She walks him through practice questions, the yeses and nos that should read like straight lines. His pulses draw their secret map on paper he will not see. The cords on his arm and chest look like reminders that the body keeps minutes the mind would rather skip. Between sessions, the detectives return with notebooks, small talk, water. They circle the same ground with careful feet. When did you last see two? Him? What were they wearing? What words did you use? Each answer arrives polished, a showroom version of routine. He speaks of early morning, of leaving for work, of a brief conversation standing in the doorway of a life. He speaks as if the truth is a couch he has already arranged and dusted. The clock works on everyone in the building. The examiner gathers papers, the red heartbeat light ends its rhythm, and the detectives come back into the room with a gravity you can feel at home. The temperature drops without touching the thermostat. One of them sits, folds her hands, and lowers her voice to the tone used when a nurse explains what the numbers really mean. You know you failed the polygraph. It lands without echo, a sentence shaped like a closed door. He blinks. His smile does not know what to do with itself. The room expands and shrinks in the same breath, and for the first time his posture forgets its choreography. He reaches, not for denial, but for time, as if a second drink of water could lengthen the hallway back to the porch, back to the neat version of life where the sun is simple and all verbs are future tense. They do not raise their voices. They do not pound the table. They set the room like a stage where silence gets the biggest line. Right now, they say, is when you stop protecting the story and start protecting yourself. They do not say the thing he is begging them not to say. They do not speak the names he has made into shields. They come back, lightly and then firmly, to the hinge that will not stop creaking. When did you last see them? He tries to fix the floorboards one by one. Maybe the time was different. Maybe a neighbor saw them after. Maybe the phone records are wrong. Maybe memory is playing its tricks. But the sentence is still there, sitting between them like a third detective with perfect posture. You know, you failed. Outside, daylight moves across the porch where he once asked for help. The front door looks the same. The blinds remain tidy, the garden polite. On the screen, the earlier interview replays with new subtitles only you can read. Every word sounds heavier now, dragged by an undertow from a room the cameras weren't allowed to see. The detectives lean in, not to corner him, but to close the distance a lie needs to breathe. Tell us when you last saw your family, they say. One more time. And this time, the question is not a request. It is a key warming in a lock. The smile is gone. The room is very small, and the next sentence will decide which version of him the world will remember, If the story so far was a door swinging on a single sentence, then this is the hallway that forces you to keep walking. The word failure sits between them like a box no one wants to open, but the detectives keep their hands steady and their voices soft. They repeat the question that refuses to die. When did you last see your family? The room is all angles and fluorescent size. His answers start to come apart at the edges, threads fraying where certainty should live. He tries to reframe the morning, to sand down the rough places. He reaches for routine, lunch pail, work truck, the garage yawning like proof. He mentions a conversation at dawn that sounds almost normal. Two adults at a kitchen counter dividing the future into clean halves. But the detectives have the phone logs, the door sensor pings, the quiet math of a house that records comings and goings even when no one is watching. They set the papers between them as if laying out weather maps. The storm tracks line up in shapes that don't match his sky. The examiner returns long enough to make failure tangible. Charts, baselines. A line that should be steady curling into questions at every mention of his wife, his daughters, the location of their bodies. Bodies. He flinches at the word, though it isn't spoken. The detectives switch from broad to narrow. Not where did you go, but which door opened first. Not when did you leave, but which light you turned off with your knuckle. They aim for the one place a lie cannot impersonate, the smallness of detail. He asks for a minute, then another. Time becomes a felt thing, hot and heavy. When he runs out of room, he asks for his father. The detectives nod. A parent walks in with the open face of someone who believes the worst thing a child can do is nothing compared to the worst thing that could happen to them. The room loses some of its institutional glare, a father's hand, and lands on a son's shoulder and tries to remind muscle of home. Words come that didn't exist on the porch. They hover in the space between sob and explanation. The kind of confession that isn't clean, it's bargaining. He suggests a moment upstairs that he says he stumbled into, a story that reassigns the spark of violence to the person who cannot speak. The detectives leave him with his father long enough for the idea to form in full. Then they return and lift it up to the light. It doesn't hold. Timelines recoil. Electronic stamps retry the scene and reject it. The weight of the morning is wrong. The order of motion is wrong. The silence after is louder than he accounted for. The detectives do not shout him down. They let the room do the disciplining. This is the time to tell the truth, they say, and the word truth, said calmly, sounds harder than any accusation. He wipes his face. He tries to push the new version forward, to make it stand, but the math will not be kind. It was never going to be kind. They show him the gaps again, where the phone slept when it should have been calling, where a neighbor's camera saw only his truck and no one small climbing in. They ask him to help them find his family. That sentence sits differently from all the others. It has a location in it, and locations demand directions. He looks smaller than the chair now, a man folding back into the outline of his choices. The father's hand lifts, falls, lifts again. You can feel the wish in it, the ancient parental urge to edit reality into something a child can survive. But the edit will not export. The detectives are gentle and relentless at once. We can bring them home today, one says. The word home rises into the air and refuses to come down. The story changes again. Not what happened, he won't let that word in, but where to drive. A field, a site, a company's name spoken like a pass. Word he once used for money and now must use for consequence. His voice turns flat, the way voices do when the future is a hallway with no doors left. He agrees to show them. Outside the room, the porch interview plays again on 1,000 screens. But the sound is different now, even if the volume is the same. In the squad room, maps unfold and fold again. A convoy readies. Tires hum. The detectives gather what they need for a search that isn't a search so much as a retrieval, guided by the only person who can draw an arrow where the map refuses. The father sits very still. He stands, and there is nothing theatrical about the moment. He is not led to a spotlight. He is led to a car. The camera over the exit catches him the way the neighbor's camera did. A figure moving from one known thing to another, carrying silence like cargo. The hallway is shorter on the way out. The question that broke the alibi has done its work. What's left is a road. And at the end of it, an answer no one wants to hear said out loud. The engine turns over. The convoy pulls into the gray Colorado afternoon. And the only thing louder than the tires on the highway is the knowledge of where they are going. The convoy cuts a seam through the afternoon, cruisers and unmarked sedans threading past wind-bent grass and white sky. Inside the lead car, he stares at the windshield as if it were the last screen left between him and the thing he does not want to name. The detectives let the road do the talking. Mile markers fall behind them like beads slipping from a broken string. He gives directions in single words. Right. Straight. There. The names come low, industrial and ordinary, the kind of places where daylight works longer hours than people. The closer they get, the less the future seems to move. The car slows, and his voice lowers until it is only a shape in the air. A gate, a turn, a stretch of dirt packed by trucks. He looks smaller, as if the land itself were reducing him to the scale of what has to be said next. The detectives do not dramatize arrival. They set the moment down carefully, like glass. A nod, a question with no flourish. Is this it? He answers by looking at the ground where the map in his head ends. The wind licks at the edges of a blue tarp in the back of someone else's truck, and the sound is a rough whisper the microphones can't quite swallow. The team fans out with purpose that feels like quiet respect. No one raises a voice. No one asks the question again. They have their answer. What follows is not the kind of scene people tell in detail. It is the kind that lives in paperwork and in the weight that settles on a chest at night. The ground yields its secrets in the slow grammar of procedure. The road back is slower. The sun drops. The building with the little red heartbeat waits for them again, and he walks inside on legs that move because there is nothing else left for them to do. In the room, he tries to keep the lie alive long enough to cover shame. He offers a version of the morning that shifts blame to someone who cannot speak back. It's a story built to misdirect grief, and it collapses when held up to the mathematics that already broke him. The detectives leave him alone with the truth he brought them to, and the truth he won't say. In one of the adjoining spaces, a father sits with his hands folded, learning what the word father has to hold, when love loses its argument with reality. Days collect, then weeks. The porch interview becomes a relic flickering on newscasts, each replay heavier than the last. In court, he wears a suit that fits like penance and stares at the table where paper makes its slow machine noises. The charges are read in a voice that never trembles. He does not stretch the case into a trial. He says the word guilty and drops it into the silence like a stone. The room absorbs it. The word keeps falling. Sentencing is a choreography of grief the law knows too well. He faces forward while people who loved what he ended speak into air that must learn new rules for holding sound. No one's voice is strong enough to change the past, but each one writes it again, correctly this time, with love at the center and horror kept outside the door. The judge answers for the state with language that has practice at being final. Life without the possibility of parole, stacked so that time itself is forced to look away. Additional years that acknowledge what could have been. The gavel lifts and descends, as if to remind the room that gravity still works. Afterward, the world does what it always does. It keeps going, a little more cautiously than before. The house stands. The porch sits. The clip plays sometimes with the sound off, and you watch his hands fold across his chest and wonder how many lies can be carried in a single posture. The interrogation room is empty now, but if you listen in the doorway, you can still hear the faint scrape of a chair and the unhurried breath of a recorder waiting to be told the rest. There is no twist that redeems anything. The twist is how small the hinge was that swung this whole case. One sentence spoken softly by a woman who knew how to read the body's private language. You know you failed the polygraph. It was not thunder or accusation, only certainty. It shortened the corridor until there was nowhere left to stand but in the truth. And the haunting ending is not in the law or the headlines. It is in the ordinary sounds that will always now sound different: the click of a front door, the hush of a hallway at dawn, the steady fluorescent breath of a ceiling light. Somewhere, in every quiet room where doubt lives, a single sentence waits with the patience of stone, still strong enough to break a story and reveal what was hidden. You know,